Hello everyone, how are you doing? Welcome to CJ Scott. I'm your host CJ Atemo. Looking forward to having a great interaction with you. You know how we do it. We have all these topical issues that we address, and as we always say, we set up the jury, but the verdict is with you. So today is not an exception. I've got two ladies and one gentleman. I will be introducing them shortly. Before we do that, I would like you to subscribe to the YouTube channel CJ Atemo. Please share this stream, host a watch party, invite your friends, tag those that you need to tag, and let's get going. We want to know that you're here, so let us know as well, just by either waving or just putting your name right there. Say I'm right here, because we want to know that you're tuned in and watching, and we want to hear your thoughts, your comments as well. Today we will be talking about modern day parenting. I know it has been talked about in several places, several times, and it's something that we keep on saying and talking about every time, especially our generation that has something to compare it with. The younger generation may not have any comparison to make because all you know is all you see right now. But I want to hear your thoughts on modern day parenting. Well, with me today, I've got ABBY Muchana.
Hi.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Very well.
Yeah.
Good to have you here.
Thank you for having me here.
I've got Chris Sakwa.
Hey.
The only one who, well, we don't just share a name, he's trying to share my hairstyle as well. He's got and then I've got Liz Muli.
Hi.
It's good to have you.
Same here, and I'm happy to be here.
All right. So as I said, keep on sharing. Stream the stream for us, invite your friends. There are those of you who have these kind of discussions in your house. Sometimes you have this pressure and you wonder, what do I do with my kids? How do I deal with this situation? Please invite all those friends that you have. I'm on two groups on WhatsApp. One is a group that was started by my primary schoolmates. You can't believe that. My primary schoolmates. And then we've got the one for campus, which is, 20 years plus. For most of them, 20 years plus. And one of the people on our campus group came up, showed us the photo of his daughter who was trying to take her life. And she had swallowed all these pills. And so she tried to kill herself, literally, and she had given up on life. And this gentleman then was saying, please talk to a distressed parent. Well, you could have those kind of people in your circle, so that's why I keep on saying, share this stream, invite everybody that you can, because probably somebody's going to receive help from you, and even you yourself. Now, ladies and gentlemen, a friend of ours had this situation, a little kid at about 16 years old. She has decided she's giving up on life, swallowed all these pills. They were like 24 hours, trying to just get the kind of drugs that she took. Like 24 of them. She has decided she has given up on life. When you think about that, or when you hear that, what comes to your mind immediately? Anybody would go.
I think for me, what comes to mind quickly is there must have been some triggers. There must have been some signs. Right. By the time this child gets to this point, there are one or two signs that probably may not have been picked by the parents.
Okay.
And so there is probably a place for the parents being close to their children, so you get to literally monitor how they are progressing. And if there's anything that is amiss, if indeed you are present as a parent, you should be able to pick something is amiss. Right. At least one of you. It may not be both of you, but at least one. So I think by the time that child gets to that point, something needed to have been picked but wasn't.
Right.
And so yes, now we probably have to deal with the situation as is, but learn from it so that the rest of us know when to pick out these signs that could be subtle, but really are speaking volumes in terms of what the child is going through.
Abby, you want to say something?
I don't have much experience in trying to understand the mindset of a teenage child.
All right.
We were just joking earlier that I'm telling them I feel like I'm on Mount Sinai with a 2.5-year-old. But I'm just trying to project to a 16-year-old girl, you said. And what I am learning about parenting is it's actually a very huge responsibility that I feel like most of us don't understand what it entails.
Right.
And I also do understand that life is very complex. Because at the same time, you'd find that these parents were present, but because of how the world order is now, I mean, I have to work.
Yeah.
I'm trying to provide the same for the child. And sometimes as parents, you found we have made sacrifices to provide a good life for the kids, of course, at the expense of themselves.
All right.
And what I'm trying to learn and to be very conscious and aware about is that responsibility actually needs time.
Okay.
So by the time your 16-year-old girl is committing suicide, it's not an issue that probably began at that time. It probably has issues that she has had previously, but were not picked by the parent.
All right.
So that is what's coming to mind, that perhaps she has a lot of underlying things
Okay.
that have layered up until that point.
Liz, sorry, but when we were growing up, you know, these psychological issues, or rather the talk like the parent being present in the life of the kids, I'm not very sure you grew up expecting that. I don't know how present our parents were. But I'm not sure that anybody would expect you to even expect emotional attention. Has the generation shifted? Have we pampered our kids today so that probably the triggers, as they're talking about, may not even be internal? Probably it is external. There was a case as well, I was just looking at that, there was a case of, was it how many years, who stabbed a 19-year-old, you know, to death?
Yeah.
Was it a 16-year-old as well?
News, yeah.
Yes, because the boyfriend, in this case, has cheated on her. She's a teenager and she stabs this guy to death because that person has cheated on her. So the triggers could even be external. But have we pampered our children, or are we pampering our children?
Yes and no, but there are two different types of parenting as we are talking right now. The way we were parented is different from the way we are parenting.
All right.
But we cannot, we have to borrow some leaves. We cannot copy paste, but we just have to borrow some leaves.
All right.
Because there's a way that the parent would discipline us, and there's a way that we are disciplining our children.
Okay.
But for most people...
Which one works? Of those two, which one?
They both work, but in a different way.
Okay.
Because you see, the way we were parented, you could just be given an eye and you would understand what your parent is saying. Again, it wasn't so good because the parents were not as present as they ought to have been.
All right.
But now we are learning new things. As we are calling things like these shows, we have some seminars, there are some churches that we coordinate some meetings for parents and just train them and teach them.
Right.
We have a lot of information online on how to parent.
Okay.
But are we there? We are not yet there. Why? Because as she says, we are so busy. We are career women.
You don't think okay, go ahead.
So, the present, the P that he talked about, most of us are not present for our children. But you realize the word parent begins with a capital P, a very big P. Means that we have to be present, no matter what.
All right.
I know we are busy, we are working, we need to give them good lives, but we still have to be present. Yeah. And what does it mean to be present? There are times that I will work in the house and assume that I am present for my children. Right. For sure I am not, because I am doing other things. When
as you say that, I remember a lady the other day asking, how do you respond to children who are making noise when you're on a Zoom meeting? And she's based in the U.S. She's a Kenyan based in the U.S. And the comments were hilarious. Everybody was like, just throw the shoe, throw the shoe. You talking about, our parents would give you the eye. And as we grow, it nearly looks like we begin to feel that the methods of our parents were effective.
But when you actually talk about presence, our parents were not present, but society was. And that's something that I feel has changed.
Wow.
So there was always an adult keeping an eye.
Okay.
I have seen very many kids where I stay misbehaving, but I cannot tell the parent because you have not invited me.
Yeah.
My mother is a career woman. She still is. But we had my auntie, we had the nanny. At any one point, someone could discipline you. In fact, that was the worst form of punishment. If you would rather the neighbor beat you and it's silent,
Right,
because if you come home, there are other rounds that will find.
Right.
So I feel like society was always present, even if the parent wasn't. And that's, I feel like that is also something that has changed.
Okay.
I have a stick called Proverbs 29:17. And the other little kids came and said, you will chapa Kinudia. And I said, yeah, even you if you misbehave. And they were very surprised. But how do we also live with our neighbors? Have I allowed people in my space to be present when I'm not there? So that the guard can be comfortable enough to tell me that my child is misbehaving and that I can see. Because I feel like we are not omnipresent, which is impossible. Neither were our parents. And I mean, there's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
So what happened with society is that there was always that eye. Even the nannies, if you don't allow your help at home to be an extra eye for you. Because these days what happens? No. Don't touch my child.
Yeah.
Don't touch.
And
But
get
before someone was reporting, you had bruises, you were even hiding. Look
And
at
you know, if you were beaten elsewhere, then
Exactly.
it's reported,
It was
you'd
what?
be beaten
You'll be
again.
beaten.
even in school, I admit that there are people who have taken the principle or the concept of the point maybe extreme, where people are being beaten even or maybe worse with strangers and so on.
Right.
However, we had teachers in school who would discipline you, and by the time your parent comes, they would explain that they were punished for this and this. You can actually even punish a child outside, not necessarily with beating. You can even just say, because I've seen you misbehaving, have a timeout, right? But we are not allowing even our neighbors, people in the society around us, to have
Chris,
that
let's
extra
talk
eye for
about
us.
these techniques that we're using nowadays, like timeout and, so Junior, you are not touching your phone and those kind of stuff. Are these things effective?
I would say yes, they are.
Do they work on an African child?
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. I'll give an example. So, my son decides to misbehave against what we had agreed on. And so, as part of punishment, because they really love to play and be out there with their friends, we tell them for the whole of this week, you're not stepping outside that door.
Okay.
You're staying in here. If it means sending anyone to the shop, it will be your brother or your sister, not you. You stay in here for a week. And you can see them watching from the balcony, going through the torture. They wish they were out there with their friends and having this fun. But guess what? They are here for a week. And just to think, by the time the week is done, they shape up. So there is a place for it. But if it's the only thing I'm using, then that's another conversation.
But how do you go around that? How do you go around that? Because you can imagine this kid standing on the balcony, seeing the other people as well. Psychological torture. I went into a high school. That's the first place I saw very different techniques because it was being run by Catholic brothers. And so they didn't really believe in using the cane. But what the headmaster would do then is, we had the parade ground with numbers. So that was very easy for them to know who missed the assembly. So when he would be punishing you, you'd be told to go and stand on your spot. And you can't move. So you just see other kids moving, going everywhere. You're stuck there like a pole. And it was in front of his office. Man, you'd be feeling like, why don't you just cane me and release me? I would rather you do all that pain than be stuck over here. What about the psychological aspect of that? Like, okay, we're not caning the children, but 1 week, you're just watching other kids doing stuff.
Okay, I would say there is a place for balance.
Okay.
So any extreme in life is just unacceptable.
All right.
So even if it's the cane you're using it too much, there has to be a balance. So even when I'm doing this with this child, I may tell them it's 1 week, but 3-4 days later, you let them off the hook. Tell them, have you learned your lesson?
Right.
Yes, I have. And so I don't have to stick to the 7 days, and I don't have to use it all the time, because yes, psychologically, it could be having other implications to the child.
Right.
And even as you're applying that, at times they come to you and they apologize.
With
and
remorse. Yes.
Yes, and they say, Mom or Dad, I have understood what I did. It was wrong. Now I just seek for forgiveness.
Sure.
And as you can see them talking, it is from the bottom of their hearts, and they have learned something.
Yeah.
And even as you're doing this, the others, the siblings, are also learning. And they're becoming so careful that they are not treated the same way.
Yeah.
So, as you say, balance. You don't take it to the extreme.
Okay.
So that we don't end up torturing them psychologically.
Again, I want to ask this before I move on to the next point. You know, the generation we're talking about is a generation that was threatened, a generation that was beaten, a generation that was tossed to and fro, tormented. Are we emotionally in the place to actually bring this balance? Because it seems like by default, you see a kid doing something, you react the way your mother would react. You have screamed, you have thrown something, you have called out something.
Are we in that place to probably be the ones to strike the balance? I think yes.
Okay.
To the extent that, like she mentioned earlier, we now have forums where we can get to sit down, share ideas, even as parents. So this is what I went through, this is how it worked. So you're borrowing one or two things. Again, even from your own experience, there are one or two things that are very relevant today that you want to apply.
All right.
And so some of us may not probably have gone through that, but as we get to share, we get to realize, okay, there is a place for this, there's a place for the other. And so how do we strike this balance? Bounce ideas off each other. Iron literally sharpens iron. So let's continue, as we continue to share, then we equip ourselves to have that necessary balance. But if I sat back and said, as a person, I can really contain myself, it may be too little too late when you have kenned that child and they are bleeding and you're having to rush them to hospital. It's gone awry.
I'll throw this at you, Chris, because you're the man here. Would you apologize to your child if you realize that either you overreacted or you did something? You know, the ladies probably wouldn't struggle too much. Maybe a bit, but maybe
Not
a bit,
too much.
but not too much. But coming from the African setting, because there are children who grow up with these wounds. And sometimes they feel it would have just been okay if my father would have apologized or something. Would you apologize to your child?
100%.
All
Yes,
right.
I do. Not I would.
Okay.
I do. But just like you've said, coming from a background where even just hearing your father tell you "I love you" is unfathomable. You can't. I mean, the best your father can do when you tell them "I love you, Dad" is. You know? So coming from that background, it's a bit. It's not so natural.
They were even struggling to tell their own wives that.
Exactly.
Forget about their children. They were even struggling to tell their own wives.
So it's not as natural, but it's something you literally have to learn.
Okay.
And like I've said, I mean, just being in the right places, in the right spaces, and bouncing it off people and getting to share, just gets to grow you in it as well. And so you start with your children at a tender age. And so, like for me today, every evening, literally, I tell each of my children, "I love you." Every evening,
Right.
as before they retire to bed. Before they
And the
retire.
mother? Is it the children alone and the mother?
And just that we can't bring my daughter on set, but she is here and she can confirm. Every evening before they retire to bed, I have to speak a blessing to them, and I tell them I love them.
You're right.
So I have grown into it. It wasn't as natural.
It threatens generation, of course. And most of the time they would say, "I never saw my father do this, so I can't do this too." Much as they would not speak it out, but it is in their minds that naturally men do not do this. Men do not act like this. And there are times that even as we are bringing up our children, you find that if a boy falls down, we just tell him, "Strong, strong, men do not cry." So they grow up knowing that men are supposed to be strong. But we do not draw the line. to tell them at some point, men can also break down. Men can also say, I am sorry. Men can also say, I love you.
Maybe just to speak to a few men,
Yeah.
African men. Guys, when I need to say sorry, I don't have to say, even you should not be doing some of this. Please speak it out.
Speak it out.
Just say, I'm sorry. It takes nothing away from your manhood, guys.
And again, you don't need to go and just buy a bag of chips to come and give that children
As an apology.
Exactly. It must come out. Another thing that I have known is that when we invite Christ in our families, makes the difference. And not just a significant difference in our lives.
When Chris is talking about that, because I grew up with an nearly absent father, so certain things were a struggle. The first time a man, and that was a friend of mine, he's a big brother figure to me, the first time a man said, give me a hug, I felt that this is violation, this is literal, I'm being violated. I did not even believe that two men can even do shoulder to shoulder. Because for men, there's no affection. No affection at all. But I had to learn, you tell your children you love them. I had to learn every day, in the morning, in the evening, I'm going to hug all my sons. It is a ritual. It's things that you learn. It's things that you cannot be using the excuse of I didn't see that. You can't use the excuse of nobody modeled that. You cannot be using the excuse of everybody around me was angry, so I am angry. This is in the family. No. You can always learn. Let us talk a little bit about, and it seems we have to do a part 2 of this. We have quite a number of things that we've got to talk about.
And even before you go to the next level, as we are still there about hugging and loving one another, boy to boy, you guys need to teach other people.
But we're still learning as well. We're learning, so we're just sharing.
As you're learning, you need to teach other people. Be generous with the information. If it is working for you.
We have just done it right now.
You need to do it in a bigger magnitude.
You see, the challenge with relationships is this. You're learning it, and then you're expressing it to the next person, but you wouldn't want to come out like you're the goals. You're not coming in as goals because you're
somewhere.
also learning.
At least you're somewhere.
Yeah, so it's something that you to other people, let them see it, let them hear the benefit. They have to make the decision to do that.
Try.
Yeah. It's difficult to load it on them. Some people, even just the personality is a barrier. The culture itself is a barrier. But that's why we hold these kind of shows over here, so that you can get to know that your normal is not the only normal. All right? Let's talk a little bit about the exposure levels that our children have. And we won't have enough time to talk about that, so I am going to just ask that we will do another one, just a part 2 of the modern day parenting. The exposure levels that our children have. Before, I grew up in the age where one person had a TV in a whole community. You had to walk a long distance to go to a house that had a telly.
Black and white.
Black and white. If anybody had colored TV, you worship those people. You'd bribe them. You'd do everything when you want to watch any program. But then there were also regulations, because TV would start at about 5. And by 11, it's gone. So people were not even struggling with those kind of levels of exposure. Today, kids at 2 years, they'll download stuff. They pick your phone. They can't even talk. They pick your phone. They know their way around the phone. So they're getting exposed to a lot of things. I discovered the other day that the cartoons that now have cuss words. So they're getting exposed to all these things. You'll say my kid is watching cartoon, but that cartoon has cuss words. It has got all the LGBT stuff and that. Let's talk about how do we manage in this particular day these kids and the overexposure.
For me, I am taking it and I'm starting from the P of presence, being there. Number
Liz,
2.
how much can you be there realistically?
if I can sacrifice
Okay.
to have time with my girlfriends, if I can sacrifice after work to go and visit a friend, then I think and I believe we can also sacrifice for our children.
Okay.
I am not meaning that every day that you'll be there, which because it is impossible, we have other things to do, but we slot some time to be present. And when you slot that time, make sure you make use of it completely. You want to know the kind of things that they are watching.
Yeah.
You'd want to know the kind of cartoons that excite them and why. Because at that time, you will become a friend. You are a parent, then you become a friend. Although there's also a line between a friend and a parent.
The parent, yeah.
So by the time you're becoming their friend, you will know the kind of things that they watch. You will know the kind of friends that they hang out with. You can even invite them over. So that you cook for them, you do a pajama party, or just something that will fascinate them, that will make them come. And even as they come,
we didn't grow up in the days of sleepover.
that was then. And this and we said we can't copy and paste, but
Right.
we can borrow.
Yes.
Some things we can borrow. So as you're there and you're very present, you have another P that represents patience. You have to have a lot of patience for them to empty, for them to tell you, for them to just trust you enough, more than a parent, so that they can just open up and tell you and show you the things. I'm not saying it will take overnight, but within some time, you will come to understand what your children do, the things that they enjoy, the cartoons, and all those things.
Chris, is it
so
that
it is
easy?
possible.
Is it that easy, the way Liz is just making it? Is it that easy? Because, you know, these kids also have their own minds. They can also decide, I know what mommy does not like. So when I sit with you over here, I will show you nearly everything, but I'll show you what you're comfortable with. And then they can still be having their own conversations.
And before you get to Chris, I can answer that. I have a son.
I want Chris to answer.
I have a son. My firstborn son, who is 25 years old, he wanted to do DJ. Because he knew mom was born again, he came and said, please guys, pay for me. I want to do gospel DJ. Right. And yes, we paid for him because he knew what mom wanted or what mom loved or what mom would allow. But I continued working with him until we got to a point where he opened up and told me, by the way, mom, I don't think gospel DJ is my stuff. Then I'm like, why did you tell us in the first place that you wanted to do gospel? Because mom, I know that is what you love. I know that is what you would have allowed. Had I not spent that time with him, he would not have opened. He would probably have gone out and started doing the secular DJ.
Right.
So you see, because of just working with them and being present, and at times not doing my WhatsApp, at times not just being busy on the television, just being with them, even if it means 1 hour a day.
All right. I still want to hear, Chris. Is it that easy?
Allow me to break the canon rules of grammar and say yes and no.
All right.
In this sense, no, let me start with the no. No to the extent that if, as parents, you do not have a credo, you do not have a philosophy, you do not have something that informs what you do, then it will for sure become difficult. Why? Because you probably are out there chasing wealth, you're out there chasing your careers, and you want to grow in the corporate ladder and become whatever it is you're looking for out there at the expense of these young ones. Right. So by the time you get to realize what's happening in their lives, you have lost them.
Okay.
So that's the no bit. It can be difficult if that's where you're coming from. But if you have an agreement as parents, this is what we want to do, and for us what comes first is these children that never applied to be here. We literally need to mold them and make them what we want them to be. Then you can make difficult choices. I would say, for example, my wife and I made a difficult choice to homeschool our children.
All right.
So she's the one that runs the homeschool. She
We were talking about
forsook-
homeschooling one of these days. I should bring you when we're talking about it again.
No problem.
Because we've talked about homeschooling, and I'd love to have that conversation with you at
No
some
problem.
point. All right.
No problem. Yeah. So because for us, bringing up these children in a way we want is important for us. She has had to turn down offers of people who've wanted her to get employed. They've been asking her, so why did you do your degree? To just sit at home? She said, guess what? That for me was something to satisfy me, that I have this education qualification. But what's important for me is these young ones.
All right. All right.
And so when you come from that point of reference, it's really easy to do.
It's easier. Abby, I'm going to ask you a question. I'm just going to take what Chris has said.
Yeah.
I'll throw it to you, but off the tangent.
All right.
The part of the problem that we would have in this presence of parenting is that it seems, and even if you pick from what Liz is saying, it always seems like it is easier for the mother to do this. The elements of presence and patience, it always seems like it is easier for the mother to do that. Because even when Chris is saying it is possible, he has brought in his wife into the picture. And now, now there is the issue of women who have to go out there and establish themselves in their careers. And they thought that, why would it be me who has to sacrifice their career and come back home and be present with the children and not the man? So sometimes in this parenting aspect, then there is the gender war in this parenting aspect. How are we supposed to fix that without necessarily somebody coming and feeling like, if I'm not going to work, he's also not going to work. If I'm doing that, it's like a war that people bring in, and it's got to follow the gender aspect. How are we supposed to fix that?
I think what I understand about gender war is also a cultural issue.
All right.
In terms of, there was a time when the women stayed at home and took care of the kids, and the men went to provide.
Okay.
That worked at that time because women could not hunt,
Okay.
women could not touch the house, but they could look after the children at that time. Maybe that's the era of our great-grandparents.
All right.
If then you come down to our parents, women were now being taken to school.
Okay.
But that adaptation of society into a new normal is what I feel like society, we have a problem with.
All right.
So at our parents' stage, my mom worked, my father worked, but you will find that she still had her responsibilities because my father did the best he could with what he knew.
All right.
So when it comes now to my time, I have to consciously call myself for a meeting and look at what I learned so that I see what happened that I need to leave for that time and what can work at this time. You have talked about technology. That is also just another part of evolution. Even our culture needs to evolve so that we pick what works now. It can have the same principle, but what works now. And with my husband, we agree that, okay, women, yes, used to stay at home, but the reality now is that I also have to work. I'm leaving at 8 with you or at 6. And I'm coming at 8 with you. So how can this work? So it's also a relational discussion to have with your partner that I'm also working. You are also working. How can it work? So then you share responsibilities that I can put my son to bed today and you can put him tomorrow. So we are bringing another new normal culture because my son will never believe that there was a time when a man could not put a child to sleep, and that will not be his reality.
All right.
So if we don't look behind, but not carry the past to the present, but just pick what can be applicable at this time, then it is possible for my husband and I to co-parent in a way that we share.
Okay.
But also this comes with knowledge and insight.
And understanding.
Right. The reason I say we're going to have a part 2 of this is because we're completely out of our time right now. Chris wanted to say something, but I'm going to give each one of you just 30 seconds, which will be your signing out. Well, I hope that your thoughts and your comments are also just coming through. What do you think about everything that we're talking about right now? Let us hear you. Let us get to know what you're saying. Please subscribe to the channel as well. Share the stream still. but I want to have the closing thoughts. Let me start with Liz. Closing thoughts, 30 seconds, then I go to Chris.
Thank you so much. Parenting does not come with a manual, but we can create our own manuals. And for those of us who are believers, believe you me, the Bible is the biggest manual. Thank you so much.
Awesome. For me, I think I will leave us with a quote from a gentleman called Alvin Toffler, who wrote a book in 1970 titled Future Shock. And so he was a futurist. And so looking at trends in society, he projected that in the 21st century, those that will be considered illiterate will be those who cannot learn and relearn, as opposed to writing and reading. So my charge to us would be this: let's adopt that mantra that in our parenting as well, let's be very deliberate about learning how to do it. And learning would be through experience and sharing. Let's unlearn, because there could be some ways of doing things or some beliefs we have carried over from how we were parented that may not be relevant today. There's a space for unlearning, and there's a space for relearning, just going back to some of those things that really worked and molded you into the person that you are today. So let's learn, let's unlearn, and let's relearn as we parent. Thank you.
After that mantra, I think it's a wrap, because now what am I going to say? Well, parenting is an amazing journey, and I feel it was never meant to be done alone. And we feel that this is my child, my responsibility, my space, but I feel like we were meant to be a part of a community, a part of a society. So then, as a parent, then you can look for other people who share your same values, your same ways of thought, your similar mindsets. And you can have your child around this environment, and then parenting can even be easier and simple.
All right. Well, everything that needs to be said for this particular session has been said, as I have said twice already. We're going to come back with a part 2 of this. I will ask the panel, the jury, to be gracious enough to grant us another, so that we can dig in further, because I know each and every one of us is affected in one way or the other. There are those of us who are struggling with how to raise our kids. There are those of us who are struggling with how we are being raised right now, because the kids right now, we just don't understand our parents at all. But whichever side of it, I'm so glad that we have this kind of platform, so that each one of us can come in and we start up the conversation. That I say, we set up the jury, you have the verdict. Until the next time, it's CJ Temo and CJ Scott. We'll see you. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, CJ Temo. Remember to also follow CJ Scott 1 on Twitter, CJ Scott Official on Instagram, CJ Scott on Facebook.